So we'll get straight into it with our speakers for tonight. We firstly have Jack Shaw. If you would like to introduce yourself, tell us a bit more about your current role, career journey, and then before diving into any advice you have for students here today.
Cool. This is working, right? Lovely. Good evening, everyone. I am Jack Shaw. I am the production coordinator at the 7 Network here in Sydney. I'm currently acting as the studio supervisor at our Martin Place headquarters. So I was very privileged to be invited to speak to you tonight about the process of success, but I'm sure I sat where you were once upon a time. You're probably thinking, what should I listen to him? So I figure it's a little bit like a first date. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, and I want to get to know a little bit about you, because otherwise you are going to be bored shitless by the end of 15 minutes and you're not going to take in anything I say. So basically, my process started a long time ago in a little small town named Wollongong. Is anyone here from Wollongong? Oh, fabulous. Do you like Wollongong?
No.
Excellent. Because I didn't either. I moved up about 4 years ago and I've never been back. It's a lovely coastal town, but my whole life I was wanting something bigger, something better, and I wanted to push myself. So basically, I moved up to Sydney and I followed my dream of pursuing a career in media. That did start, however, with the hard work back in high school, which obviously all of you have done because you've made your way to uni. You're probably all amazing, smart, intellectual individuals. I went to Evan Rice College and I graduated as Dux with a 99.55 ATAR. Subtle, drop in of that, because that's apparently what success is for some people. I'm here to tell you it's absolutely not. Pieces of paper and high marks won't actually get you a job. It'll go, oh, okay, you can work hard, but you actually need to do other things to get places. So that did lead me, however, to your rival uni at the University of Sydney across the road, where I did a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in marketing and advanced studies in media comms as a Dale Scholar. Once again, I applied myself quite hard there to graduate with a HD WAM, because I thought, oh, that's going to get me a good job. It didn't. Once again, I got that little piece of paper like it's out of a cereal box these days, thinking, oh, that's going to make me successful, and it didn't. But the whole time I was at uni, I was working my ass off, knowing that if I'm just going to sit here, drink my life away. I don't drink. That's a side note. That's something you need to know. I haven't had a drop of alcohol in my life. But I just thought I'm not actually going to get anywhere. So I have to work hard now, because I was an absolute nobody when I came to Sydney. I knew no one. I had no friends, no family up here, no connections that would, give me a leg up into what I wanted. It literally felt, if I look back at it in my romanticized view, like a little rom-com, right? I was the country bumpkin who came with my little suitcase to Sydney thinking, shit, it's sink or swim. And that's basically what I did. I was like, okay, let's start dog paddling first to get somewhere. So if we move on to the bottom there, I'm currently the production coordinator at 7, but I'm covering paternity leave at the moment, so I do studio supervisor work. You may be wondering, what on earth does that entail? So basically, anyone familiar with the show Sunrise, the morning show? Yes, beautiful 6 p.m. news with Mark Ferguson. Yes, lovely. So all those shows come out of our Martin Place headquarters. So what myself and my team help facilitate is all the on-air critical needs to get these shows to line. So I'm not a producer. I don't sit there writing my content, for journalists or anything like that. What we do is we help facilitate all the crewing needs that actually physically get the show to line. So you think your directors, your production assistants, your stagehands, your camera operators, anybody and everyone who is critical to getting what you see on TV on there, we manage, we facilitate, and we do it 365 days for about 16 hours of programming throughout the whole day. We're there literally 24/7. So basically what I would say is, you name it, our department probably does it, or at least it gets lumped on us at the end of the day. So moving on to the next slide, my career journey. When I actually came to Sydney and I was at UCID and I told you all about the fact that I needed to do something to get somewhere, I literally had no idea really where I wanted to be, except for the fact I wanted to work in media. And media is very broad, very general. Some of you in here, you want to be what? Marketing professionals? Yes, no, hands up, come on, don't be shy, I'm not going to eat you. Yeah, fabulous. Who wants to work in PR? Who wants to go to fabulous events, take good photos with celebs? Excellent. Who wants to be a journalist? Cool. Yeah, this won't speak to you then, because I work for a television network. No, joking, please take notes. So basically, I was similar in the sense I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go, but I knew it would be somewhere in either PR, TV, or radio. So I started with the PR and corporate side of things when I was 18 at the International Convention Centre. And I started there as a workforce planning coordinator, so very like HR driven type role, which I then used to sort of get me a comms internship with their team. So I started doing like his generic press releases, internal and external comms, compiling media lists to communicate about events to external stakeholders, all that sort of groundhog work to just build up some sort of resume. Then that led me to a PR company, Weber Shandwick, where I became a junior account exec and I liaised with clients, so it's client facing, helped actually proactively pitch to media, including the network I work at today. And, you know, handled everything from like social media to actual events and all the fun stuff that COVID threw at us as well. So that was mixed into there. But the bottom line was I was very bored. I was like, this is so boring. Oh my God, sitting behind a computer all day typing away, not to put you off comms or, you know, corporate comms or PR, but especially in the APRS society. But it was a little dry. So I needed some fun. So as you can see over here, I became one of Sydney's Casanovas for Nova 96.9, which is a radio station. Anyone know about that? Yes? Fabulous. Have you seen us out on the street handing you a trucker hat, an ice cream block, or free tickets for concert? No? Well, that's what I did. So I had a lot of fun with that. And basically became the face and sound of like some of their national marketing campaigns. Once again, interacting on social media and representing clients at activations, so concerts, footy games, etc. were there. Then I used that as well to go into their PR side of things. So Nova's Red Room with people like Ed Sheeran, the Pussycat Dolls, Lizzo, all of that. I was part of the team that helped facilitated that, wrote up all the comms, made sure that we got all that traction that you want online, because that's exactly what these things are. They're there to get, you know, traction and interest from our listener base. So once again, I was sort of like, this is speaking to me, but it's quite a young industry and it's fun, but is this something I want to commit to? No. So the whole time I was working between those, I also was in TV across the road at Studio 10 in Piedmont. Does anyone know that morning TV show? That's what I thought, not many people do. It's not a massive program, however, it is daytime television, so between the hours of like 8 and 12, usually after reruns of Bold and the Beautiful it runs. And I started literally there filling the meat pie warm-up for the audience as a 6-week internship for uni, because it was a tick and flick thing I needed to do as part of my degree. Let's be real. Do you guys have to do an internship as part of your degrees? Oh God, you're very lucky. Free labor. I'm going to tell you later on, don't do an internship for too long. And I'm not meant to probably say that again, but I'm going to tell you they're going to use and abuse you if you don't call it at a certain point. So anyway, I started there. Then all of a sudden, the audience assistant sort of disappeared. I needed to cover some leave. And then I started getting paid for my work. Then I became a full-time audience assistant, then up to production coordinator. And then I got a bit bored and I was like, I need bigger, better, brighter things. Similar to my move from Wollongong to Sydney, I decided, okay, 7 Network, here I come. So I applied for a job there and I'm now still there, absolutely loving it. It's incredible. It's fast paced. It's very intense. It's meant to be 9 to 5, but you're basically on call 24/7. But it's the type of job where if you love it, you'll thrive in it. If you want to switch off, you know, before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m, the door's there. Like, and that is the bottom line with most things in media. I'm going to tell you, this industry is not very, I guess, friendly to those who want to be like, oh, that's 5 o'clock. All right, I'm going my bag. See you tomorrow. You're not going to, I don't want to say last very long, but you're not going to be very happy when you wake up in the morning and you see all these emails about things you've missed that are critical that you should have really chased up either throughout the night or the morning of. So that's one thing I want to touch on there. Between all these jobs, they all are very time critical and you need to be on 24/7. Now, switching over again, what are some career achievements I have? Now, the reason I harped on so much about my journey is not to prove, oh my God, I did a little bit of everything, I'm amazing. No, that's all crap. It's just literally little bits of work to lead you to where you are today. If there's one thing you have taken in so far, oh good, I'm not seeing anyone on Facebook, that's good, I've got you still, is that I did a little bit of everything. I literally was jack of all trades, because I was like, shit, if I don't, I'm not going to be competitive, because look around you, there's what, 50 of us in this room? There's going to be 50,000 of you graduating with a similar media, PR or advertising degree at the end. Are there going to be 50,000 jobs? Probably not. So you're going to want to make sure that you've got some sort of winning edge over somebody else. That's the fact of the matter. Similar to the HSC, similar to uni, you want to do the best. But the fact of the matter is it's now about profession and expertise and experience. But my career achievements is not meeting fabulous people like Emma McKeon, who's, you know, gold medalist from the Olympic Games. Anyone know her on screen? No? Okay, should have watched 7 for the Olympics. Please do, keep me in a job. Or, you know, waking up with sunrise and working with great people like Koshi and Nat. What actually was my biggest career achievement so far was leading a full-time job. going from something or everything to absolutely nothing. So you may have seen on the slide before that I also had a sidestep into sales at Southern Cross Austereo. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the network. It's the Today FM, the Hit Network, Listener Podcaster app. Anyone know that? Yes, hands up, hands up. Fabulous, good. So it was a great company, great culture. But in the midst of a pandemic, when I was working 5 freelance / part-time roles, I was like, look, I need to land something because I'm about to finish my degree and everyone wants that golden full-time contract, right? Especially in sales. There's a nice salary, there's bonuses, there's commission, it's all guaranteed. If you can sell, if you can talk your ass off, you can make a lot of money. And I fell into the trap for the second time in my life. The first was with the ATAR. Do law and media. Law's safe. Law will get you a good job. Did that for 6 months, was morbidly depressed. Absolutely hated it. Left that and went into media. But similar with the job, I was like, okay, oh my God, a salary. I'm safe. Oh my God, I'm full-time. This is going to lead me to what I want. Got 6 weeks into that. I marched into my national sales manager's office and I was like, I quit. Left it all behind. And you're probably like, how on earth is this a career achievement? This person's a psychopath. You left behind a salary because you like it, you were bored. You try entering your little ad spots into IBMS. You will be very bored. Critical role nonetheless, but you have to do what you love. That's one thing I want to preach to you now until the end. Do what you love. I didn't love what I was doing. I gave up 5 things that I was loving or liking to a significant extent just for a full-time contract, just for a salary, thinking this is the right thing to do. With 6 months left of uni, you know what? I have to land something now. Now's the time. And I sort of jumped the gun before they said go. Even though that's sort of what I did all the way through, right when they were like 3, 2, 1, I jumped before I could actually leave the starting line, right? So that has been my biggest career achievement, is not necessarily, you know, working here, there, and everywhere, doing a bit of everything. It was leaving this full-time gig. Now, why did I do it? The 7 gig was nowhere near on the spectrum at that stage. There wasn't even a role. But I started thinking when I quit, I'm like, what do I actually want to do? Why was I sitting at my desk the morning Samantha Armitage resigned off Sunrise with a tear in my eye? Very dramatic. Let's do this dramatic scene, okay? Come with me, come for the journey. I'm sitting in this office in my sales role, and I'm looking at the TV and I see Studio 10 with the hosts I used to run copies for and love having a chat about the weekend with, while Sam's crying saying, I'm leaving Sunrise. And I'm sitting there with a tear in my eye going, why am I so upset? Why am I sitting here so sad when I'm getting thousands of dollars every week into my account to sell ad spots for the blog? Yep, you want to buy $500,000 worth of the blog? Sure. That's what I was doing. And I was like, this is not right. So I left. And I knew at that point, okay, it's TV, it's something in production. And I knew that's what I loved. I sat there for about 2 weeks waiting for some sort of role to come up, going on Seek, every night going, oh shit, I'm going to be unemployed and I'm going to be sitting on Zoom for the rest of my life, finishing off my degree. And I fucked it all up. And then finally I saw this role come up, my current role. I applied at like 11 o'clock at night. I had an email at I think 6 in the morning from my now boss saying we'd like to get me in for an interview. Interviewed on the Monday, by the Friday I had the job. The Tuesday after I started. Ever since, rest is history. And that's where I really noticed I never wake up with today. Who knows, maybe one day I'll be there. I know, fingers crossed, hopefully not. I love 7. But I did always wake up with sunrise. As cliche as it sounds, I started thinking, holy shit, this is like full circle. Who was I having breakfast with? It was the 7 Network. I was watching it. I was loving it. And I'm not saying I'll get you to join and, you know, come sing Kumbaya around the bush, you know, campfire with me at 7, but it is an incredible workplace. And I only found that out after this career achievement of falling into a job that I didn't necessarily love, not because of the people or the company. SEO was fantastic too, but it was a role that just did not speak to me. That's my biggest career achievement so far. Then moving on to a case study, oh, I'm pushed for time. I hope you're not needing to have dinner after this, is our Upskill, Uplift and Uphold program. So we're all familiar with obviously the pandemic. Yes, duh, we're all depressed and miserable because we've been, you know, stuck in lockdowns. But how many times did you turn on your TV and not see Sunrise or the news or even the Today Show or any other show for that matter not go to air? Exactly. We stood there the whole time. And one thing that I pushed for when I joined this the 7 Network or joined this role that I'm currently working in is that you need to upskill your people. And you might be thinking, how did you come up with that idea? Or why did you pitch that in an interview? Way back when I was working at ICC at 18, I was rostering a staff load of 1,500 people for dinner events, concerts, gala dinners, etc. And the whole reason we were able to do that day in, day out was because every single employee was cross-trained. Now, when I arrived at 7, there were they are incredibly talented individuals. who are just maybe a director or just an audio assistant. But underneath them, there's all these other roles that they could be cross-trained into to successfully apply themselves and help us out when, as it did throughout the pandemic, someone got COVID or someone couldn't come in, or there's a whole contextual issue of a pandemic that stops people from actually coming into work, right? You can't just have one person that's irreplaceable. You have to have people who are trained in every single possible role, all the roles underneath them, in order to keep yourself on air and successful at all times. Your presenters aren't just parked off the street and gone, okay, you're going to speak to 1 million people every morning. They once upon a time were production assistants, production coordinators, junior producers, line producers, assistant producers, and then they finally get the gig as a presenter. But you bet your bottom dollar if you were to say, oh, we need you to actually do some producing work. They'll go from saying, hi, I'm Cindy Crawford, live from the scene, to being able to actually type something up and get it to line. And that's exactly what I wanted to apply within our team on the control room and the studio floor. So that's what we did. We upskilled a lot of our individuals throughout the pandemic, and we got ourselves out of a lot of trouble that literally could have seen us off air. How did this help? It helped uplift camaraderie and team spirit, which is a huge goal going towards our move to Evelyn. Anyone know that we're moving from the fabulous Martin Place to Redfern next year? No? Okay, well, if you join us, you'll see our brand new offices that are being built. We are moving across Sydney later on. What this also did was obviously uplift skills, which is incredibly important, but most of all, it upheld our core company values. Now, I don't expect you to know these, but the 3 core company values we have are be brave. And these individuals were brave because they took on new roles and they took a risk to try something new, to ultimately better themselves in the company and keep us on air in a 1 in 100 year event where it would have been probably not from a company perspective okay to not be on air, but the lay person or the lay viewer would go, oh, of course they're off air because there's COVID everywhere. But that's not acceptable when you're talking multi-billion dollar industry or multi-billion dollar network, putting stuff to air every single day, 24/7, basically. That proved that we were better together as a family. We really are a big family at Seven. It's a very stressful family at times. It can be very difficult, but we all came together for a broader goal of making sure that we never compromise what we put to line the whole time that we were living throughout a pandemic. And then ultimately we made it happen. We had a goal when I started and when everyone else I worked around with was that, you know what, we're dealing with Delta, we're dealing with Omicron, Alpha. I'm trying to go through the whole bloody alphabet of Omicrons and cons and things that we've had of these, whole pandemic we lived through. But the bottom line was, we were like, we're never compromising what we put to line. We're going to stay on air this whole time. We're going to go for it, for better or worse. And we did that by making sure that we were upskilled. We were constantly pushing the boundaries and making sure, you know what, we literally are, as cliche as it sounds, better together by helping one another and training one another. So the result was employee development. We stayed on there and we basically killed it. If you look at the ratings, we're number 1. We kept all the programs line. We built the community, brought the community together, with all our programs by informing them. It's the most important thing that was happening in our lives, basically the better part of 3 years now. So then moving on to, I believe the next one's the last one. You're probably like, thank God. Sorry, yes, that is my graduation photo from last year at UNSW. You can go, oh my God, UNSW does. I'm here to say it doesn't. I love UNSW too. That is why I'm here, but I don't know how seriously you take the rivalry. I know UNSW definitely took it very seriously back in the day, if you're in any sort of society. But my advice to you, if you take nothing away from all the stuff I've said and you're like, oh my God, I'm so hungry, I want to get out of here. Oh my God, I really want to respond to this DM that's on my Instagram, is uni's meant to be fun. Have fun, go to these events, have snacks, go out, party, drink, live in college, whatever, please get degrees if you like. But I'm telling you, striving for 99, striving for HDs isn't going to actually get you a job. This will prove to employees and prospective employers, okay, you can work at something for 4 or 5 years. That is fantastic. But just because you were the smartest in your year group doesn't mean you're going to end up with the best job or the biggest salary. Because the bottom line is you need experience. You need to work the whole time while you're actually doing a degree. If you looked at the dates and the times of some of the jobs I did, they might not necessarily be the most glamorous thing. I mean, hello, stacking a meat pie oven. I can't cook. Jesus, like I burnt myself so many times on those meat pies. But it got me somewhere. Handing out trucker hats. This doesn't fit under a hat. Like I can't do that, right? But I could do it with a smile and say, hey, Nova 96.9, do you want a free trucker hat? Yes, you do, darling. Come over here and we're going to play a little game. Play like all these little weird, quirky games about our songs, about stuff to put to radio. And at the end of the day, it led me somewhere. Every single little job will take you somewhere. And do all those little jobs while you're at uni. Okay, like obviously work at Arnott, work in the Mac Cafe, whatever pays your bills, whatever pays your rent. I'm getting a bit preachy here. I'm like, holy shit. Like that, I love money. I had to work too. and I had bills to pay. But try and get it at least somewhat in what you want to do. So I saw before at the beginning of this, some of you want to go to PR. Do an internship, as I say, with discretion, because they will take you for a ride. I'm telling you, that 6-week internship might turn into 12, 18, 6 months. Like 6, 12, 18 weeks, whatever. I can't really do maths. I dropped maths in year 10. So yeah, I think all of us are similar here. Humanities, arts, English, yeah. But what I'm trying to say is work the whole time, whether it be an internship, start that and then move into a paid role. Don't be scared to ask for a bit of money. And if they say no, someone will pay you to do something within your industry. My next thing, try before you buy. Anyone here bought a car? I was going to say house, but if you did, I'm very impressed. Tell me your tips. Anyone here bought a car at least? Okay, did anyone here, you buy chocolate, right? Maybe that's a more apt example. Uni student budget, I was there too. Yes, who buys chocolate? Who loves Cadbury? Yeah, but you tried Lindt too, right? And you went, oh, a bit too strong, 70% ultra darks, a bit too bitter, keeps you awake at night. Yes? Tried it and you're like, that shit out, so not doing it again. But you tried everything to find, okay, Cadbury white chocolate is the stuff that I love the most, right? Try everything before you buy, like literally be a jack of all trades or do a little bit of every single job you can within your industry or whatever avenue you want to go down, PR, radio, TV. Try it because each job you do, you'll go, liked it, didn't really like that, that was a bit shit. But that is what's drawing me to my next role. You'll learn a bit of things that you liked there and you'll go, I hated doing that. That will then lead you to your next thing. If you do all of that while you're at uni, you're already miles ahead of those who just come out with a piece of paper. Sounds bad, but it's very true. No matter how small, how insignificant you think your job is, or the role that you're doing at the time, you're already on the process of success by starting to work towards something. And then ultimately, do what you love. For the love of God, for the last point, if I can say anything, forget what others say, whether it be your parents, your friends, the person sitting next to you, me, even. This is my journey, this is my story. I could talk a shit, let's be real. Like, you could literally be like, I'm not taking anything away from that because I don't want to go down that path. Or it's like, okay, I'll take a little bit. Forget what others say. Don't do law. Don't worry about getting the highest marks. But try and at least do something out of this. Think, okay, I don't want to do this. I'm going to try a little bit of that. And then I'll start finding what I like. What you like will turn into, I like this a lot. And that will turn into love, just like all good relationships. So like a 23-year-old single man over here. But what that will do is you'll forget what others say, forget about pay for the love of God, because as I told you about my career achievement, I just saw a big, nice salary once upon a time when I was still at uni. I'm like, oh, that's going to help me buy a place. I'm going to be sorted. And 6 weeks later, I was walking out of the office with my little brown box. And I was like, oh, well, that was a nice little free metal water bottle I got from that network. And I was straight back onto Seek at lunchtime. So yes, forget about pay, at least at the beginning. And then you will ultimately find the right way. You'll find, okay, this is working for me. I'm getting somewhere. I'm doing what I like. I'm not dreading going to work and I love it. And before you know it, you'll not only be doing what you want, you'll be going for it and you will end up going far. That's my process of success. Or at least my take. Thank you.
For providing just a bit about what you went through in uni. I'm sure it's helpful for all the students here today because we do have a range of university students here, first to fourth year, so very good advice. And we'll move on to, also if you have a question specifically for Jack, scan the QR code and we'll have a Q&A at the end for that. Next we have Jared, so moving on. Please introduce yourself as well and tell the audience a bit more about yourself and the career journey that you've been on.
Hello. That was good as. All right, let's go. Like half of the stuff I was going to say, I've already said, but like have a different point of view. So my story starts in New Zealand. Yeah, anyone here from New Zealand? Like even like the interaction things where it's like, is anyone from here? Like he's already done it. Anyone from New Zealand? No.
Have you been?
Kia ora, nice one. Cool. And really similar to Australia, it's a pretty privileged market to start in. With it being small time, it's quite a big opportunity to be involved with. Let me start again. That really threw me off, Jack. So good. Yeah, starting in New Zealand is similar to Australia. It's a pretty fortunate experience to be involved in a smaller time market, because you're pretty honoured to be early in your career involved in some pretty big decisions and hopefully have your opinion in front of decision makers, in front of businesses like here we are with Arnott and AfterPay and 7. We're all quite young considerably, and so it's pretty good to be young in these smaller industries, because there's just a lot more opportunity, and if you want to really take it and go for it, there are steps that you can do, and you can get to being in those bigger situations, and more senior positions quite early. Is anybody interested in social media as a career? Yes, that's what we like. Nice one. So has anyone got an internship? Yeah. Nice one. Just wait afterwards. Basically, with social media, there's like 4 or 5 key areas that you're wanting to explore if you're wanting to get into that industry. Content, media, community, and strategy. And they're the real key areas that you need to be comfortable with and familiar with if you're really wanting to evolve in a career in social media. So I started as an intern, which is pretty classic and such a good thing to do. It's so much fun. You kind of have not too many boundaries, so it really allows your creativity to expand. And when there's no real pressure of budget or clients' purchases on the line, you can kind of have a bit more fun with your ideas. So I started as an intern, and then moved into content. It's pretty natural when you're a young person in social media industry to start in content, because that's sort of what we're doing outside of work anyways. It's a pretty native thing for us to post on social. Like, it's not really much more to say apart from that. And then after doing that, I kind of got a bit bored with posting all the time, because you kind of post all day on everybody else's accounts and this and that, and then you go home and you're like, I don't want to do it myself. And so I kind of got a bit over content and then moved into the account area. And accounts, sorry, there's 5, 5th one being accounts. And accounts is like suits. If you're looking at it in the classic advertising sort of way of creative, they're suits. And that's where you're sending emails and going to meetings, and just talking the talk really. It was fun as a junior to start in that area. And if anyone likes a free lunch, definitely get into it. Because that's really where you're meeting the clients and getting in touch with them and going to meetings and talking through the reports and talking through the numbers and stats of what you've done previously, instead of actually doing it. And then a marketing executive was sort of holistically all of that. And then I moved into the paid section of social, which is really where your buy now kind of click to website things come. It's the kind of like, you know, when you click on ASOS and then the next day that same jacket's there. That's like paid media. And that was a really interesting area to get into, because it sort of teaches you the back end of social and what the beast is actually like. Like you kind of see how niche you can target your audience and how specific you can reach people. I was thinking of setting up an ad just for this lecture theatre just to say hello, but my Wi-Fi's out, so I didn't do it. So, but there's it teaches you sort of magical things around that about how you can tactically reach people and get your content in front of the eyeballs that you need to and that your clients need to reach. And then from there, I moved into a bit more of a senior level of social media buying. And I was looking after things like Destination New South Wales, which was funny being a New Zealander, because it was like, come to this area. And I was like, yeah, let's go there. Don't know where that is. But that was really interesting, because you get to see a bit more of what more serious corporations do when it comes to media. And it's quite interesting because there's quite a bit more money going around than you kind of expect. Like you think social media is kind of, oh, this is nice. Like I know someone that put $50 on ads, but there's kind of people out there that put in 50K on ads. And that's pretty fun to see. It's quite interesting seeing what like 3 million people reached due to your ad and due to your content. It's quite an interesting area of social media because you get to see more scope and more scale of what your content's doing on the platform and how the business is performing. And then DDB, where I was looking after McDonald's social. that was pretty crazy. There's heaps going on there. Wait, can everyone hear me? I feel like the mic's going out. Yeah, cool. And that was pretty interesting. That was kind of the summation of my content era, because McDonald's is a bit of a beast, and I was kind of like not on that buzz, because there's just too much going on. And when you get into like bigger industries and bigger clients like that, you start to lose touch with the decision makers, and your ideas can sometimes get lost in the bigger machine. So that's why I moved to smaller time agencies with Spicy Broccoli, Louis, and then Nice House, which we'll get onto later. And these are real small time clients, and that's where you can be at a young professional involved in sort of talking to directors of companies and talking to business owners going, hey, why don't we do this? And they're going, oh, sure. And then you see a whole brand develop your idea and expand it, and see a whole brand grow just off your natural idea. It's pretty cool to be able to do. So if you can look at boutique agencies and small time places for internships, definitely recommend. And then there was a thing that was like, talk about something you're working on at the moment. So here's this one. And this one is a good summation of sort of all things in social media coming into one. If you have social media, check it out later. But it's basically a really good collection of all parts of social media singing together to reach one campaign. So with this, we've got paid media running to about 70 different audiences, content community through Facebook groups, and all real areas of social media leading to one that's, but you can check it out later. I shouldn't talk about it too much because I didn't ask the client, but we'll move on. And then a piece of advice for everyone. I went to university as well. I don't know if you saw it on that LinkedIn, but I was in a similar lecture theatre to everyone earlier. And I was kind of thinking, like, when I got asked, I was like, what would I think would be very valuable to hear if I was in this situation again? And pretty much just have confidence in yourself and have confidence in your youth. So often with like social media trends and general trends in digital, it's tailored towards a younger generation and younger consumers. And there's companies spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to reach younger audiences. Sorry, everyone. They are doing it though. There's companies spending heaps of money to try cater to younger audiences and try play on experiences that we naturally are involved in, and we're naturally creating those trends. There's a term that you may have heard, hopefully you have heard about, digital natives, and that's about young people sort of being familiar with all the technology and all the media that we're sort of seeing grow and seeing have influence in the real world. And this is just like, makes sense. That slide, I just thought it was quite relevant, because there's lots of people trying to talk the talk of young people, when it's a lot better when you can just talk it yourself. And then in saying that, goes to the next slide, which introduces us to Nice House. So Nice House is an agency that I founded with a few friends, all sort of off the back of everything I just said. Having young people do what we want to do and naturally what we want to do, and come up with ideas that we sort of see relevant and see want to grow, and then taking that to clients and saying, instead of paying all sorts of other things, come to the people who are actually influencing the culture at the time. And then if anybody does want to influence the culture at the time, hit me up. You can message Nice House on Instagram. I don't need to tell you how to do that, because what did I just say? Thank you.
Thank you, Jared, and I'm sure we'll get to know a bit more about Nice House as well during the networking session. So if you're interested, stay till the end, and you can ask Jared a bit more about that. So next we have James. We have James from AfterPay. Feel free to introduce yourself, and before diving into your key insights about your career progression into AfterPay.
Sounds good. Hey guys, so I'm James, and I'm actually quite fresh to AfterPay. I started at the start of the year with AfterPay, and before that about 7 years on the agency side of PR and communications. If you jump to the next slide, please. So just a bit about who I am and why I'd love to talk to you about kind of careers in PR. So I started, my degree, so I did Sydney Uni as an undergrad, doing an arts degree, political economy and government international studies. I was really interested in the world and kind of solving the world's problems, as a lot of us young people often are, very ambitiously thinking that we'll be the one to change the world, and you can be. And then my master's degree was in communications management at UTS. So it wasn't until quite a few years later when I'd already kind of started working, when I decided to go back and get a bit more academic about the work that I was doing. I'll talk to you on the next slide about kind of how I got there, but the bottom there, I just really wanted to kind of say, agency land is a great place to start your careers. You get so many different opportunities to work on different campaigns, and that list there is never a one-person effort. I think you both really well, talking about the fact that there's creatives, there's suits. There are so many different roles and brilliant brains that come into pulling together any given campaign. And so I think agency land is a great place to start when you can work and solve different problems for different people, and get to know a bit of, becoming the jack of all trades, as Jack said. So on the next slide, I'll talk to you about my career. So straight out of uni, I was working in events. Kind of started as labouring jobs. Actually, my first job was not up there. I was a lifeguard at Falls, and then transitioned to a wedding company where I was just setting up, bumping in and bumping out weddings. So bringing a van to a wedding, carrying chairs, that sort of thing, got me into the event space. So my first proper job was Lost Events in 2009. So they're kind of parties for about 2,000 people with recognisable names like Flight Facilities, those sorts of things playing, and then we got a lot of brand partnerships for in-person execution. So big kind of drink brands would often be the main partners. So Red Bull, Diageo, Lion Nathan, and it's all about, I guess, how they connect with people in the real space. So they're all themed parties. So one of the fun first tastes, I guess, I got of trying to be creative was, as we were kind of curators of the events, every event was themed and in a different location. So no one would find out where they were going until the day of the event. But they all knew they were going to a themed party. So for example, you buy a ticket to Lost Fraternity, that was one there, and the party itself was at a uni campus in Drummoyne somewhere, off an old uni. And and then the activations themselves would kind of have to, I guess, fit into that theme. So we'd be working with the brand managers and talking about how they could set up their spaces and how they could kind of represent their brand in an authentic way. But that was, I guess, really early days for me. And I really liked the taste of what I got there. But as I realized that my degree wasn't really matched with what I was doing all this kind of physical events-based stuff, but I really liked writing. And I really wanted to kind of move into a bit more of a strategy role. My stepping stone kind of presented itself when I met someone from Red Havas, which at the time had two different agencies within it. There was Red Gorilla, which was experiential marketing. So again, that's all about that physical event space and how brands interact with people in person. And then Red Agency, which was their PR wing. So when I moved in, they wanted help on the experiential side, and that's kind of where all my experience was. But again, I guess what the guys have spoken earlier, don't hesitate to ask for what you want. And I didn't really have any experience. I didn't have a degree in PR, but I knew I wanted to kind of head in that direction to give it a try. So I said to them, I'm happy to do 3 days a week interning for your experiential marketing, as long as I can get 2 days a week with PR. And within 6 months, I think it was, we were able to swap those around just by doing the work. So I guess quickly just touching on those, experiential marketing, what you could expect in a career like that, they do a lot of stuff in kind of government and public health space. So there's lots of kind of fairs like Vivid and those sorts of things where brands like New South Wales Health would want to show up and start to share messaging about public health campaigns, trying to make the country healthier. And that happens kind of all throughout regional shows, Easter shows, all those sorts of things that turn up in physical spaces. There's often lots of budgets being dropped about how to kind of engage with people as they flow through space, how to get your messages across and communicate that. And I think the Nova guys would regularly turn up at those sorts of things. After some time in Red Agency, and I can talk to you a bit about some of the campaigns we did there, but I guess that was my first in Red Agency as a PR team. That was where we really got stuck into media. So that was where I guess the most stereotypical PR roles I had. Really on the phones to journalists pitching stories. We won Media Relations Campaign of the Year 2 years, really luckily. So Vivid, which is the photo up there, was one of them. And that's really about, as you can imagine, Vivid is a massive roster of different micro events going on throughout the Vivid calendar. So at the top level, you've got to tell the story of what does the Minister for Tourism want to achieve for New South Wales. And there's that kind of top level messaging that makes sure the government is happy with the money that they're spending on Vivid as an activation. Going right down to Oxford Arts Factory has a local artist playing. They've got their community. How do you make sure that they get through to them, make sure they're selling the tickets for it? And then how do you make sure, like right throughout that New South Wales is seen as kind of a hot place to be? So that was a good one there. Moving on to end-to-end, I actually, between Red Agency and Lost, did a 1 week work experience at end-to-end. And it was kind of 2 years later that they came back to me and said, we've actually got some space for you now if you'd like to come and have a job with us, which I said I would love to have. So end-to-end was the company when I started. When I started there, it was about 75 people and they're an independent company. Not long, maybe 2 years into the career, they got acquired by Publicis Group, which is kind of a big French multinational company, and rebranded to Herd MSL. And throughout that time, I guess my time at Herd was really transformational for my career. I think if you sit in any agency or any job really for long enough, you should really look for a company that cares about you as much as you care about your own career. Herd really gave me the opportunity to kind of shape who I wanted to become, and we're really interested in your passions. And I think if I could give one bit of advice, it's really to show your passions throughout every stage of your career. I think we often sit there thinking about what the job interview questions are going to be, and to Jack's point, we always stress about whether it's the ATAR or something like that. I think the most common question I've had in all my interviews is, what are you reading at the moment? People really want to see passion and see you're interested in something, and it doesn't have to be something relevant to that job. But I think what they're looking for is that you get passionate about things and that you apply yourself to them. I think every job hopes that they'll be able to get you passionate about the job that you're going into. They just want to see that if you fall in love with it, are you going to really apply yourself to it? So whether that's a podcast that you're really into, or a book, or some news that you've been reading lately, I think having that passion and make sure you show it through is something that a lot of people are looking for. And I guess for some campaigns that we did there, Until We All Belong was probably my most proud moment. As the brother to two sisters within the LGBTQI community, the Until We All Belong campaign was really important to me. Airbnb's kind of their mission purpose is belonging. So it's about people finding kind of natural homes or homes that feel like home in other countries. And so I think it was a nice bridge for them at a very important point in Australian history when we had the referendum for the yes vote, to take a stand, and not a lot of brands were doing it at that time. So really props to the people at the company that took a stand and said that they wanted to run with a campaign like that. Again, that had all sorts of agencies all throughout it, and I was lucky to be a small part of that campaign. But I guess, through PR, it's one of the few business units in any job you'll find where you can justify kind of through like a business value, doing things for good. Engineers can build a new product and say that's going to be great for the company. You can have a new product and it's going to be valuable to the company. PR can say that doing good is good for business. And it's sad that we have to kind of, I guess, justify it that way sometimes. But if you were to say that, connecting with our audience means doing the right thing by the audience, doing the right thing by the world, that's kind of a voice that needs to be heard, and it's a voice that can definitely come from public relations and communications departments. And then finally, AfterPay, very quickly, started here in January. So only a few things, but they're a busy place to work. I'm lucky enough to work with Angela from Your Own Society. So Angela's been working with us, and we've done a few campaigns since I got here, one of them being AfterPay Day, which was just the other weekend. Obviously a big, massive sales event for the year, but I'll talk you through a bit about that. Actually, next slide. I wanted to quickly highlight two campaigns, one from agency side and one from in-house side, just so you get to know, I guess, a bit about roles in communications. You can work obviously agency side, in-house, and there's a whole bunch of different jobs in between. On the agency side, I just want to show you some diversity and all the different things that we pulled together. So on the agency side, we worked on the captain's ride. So this, I guess, went back to my first kind of dreams when I was working, doing a Bachelor of Arts, was that I really wanted to help NGOs make noise about the causes that they were fighting for. So the Steve Orr Foundation, he focuses on rare diseases. So diseases that are so rare with so few people that they actually kind of sit outside of the boundaries of the NDIS and our national health scheme. So a lot of kids that may be like 1 or 2 of the only people in the world with that disease. And because of that classification, they can't get government funding to help support with the stuff that they need in their lives. So Steve Wall Foundation raises money to help them, and they do everything from a customized wheelchair that someone can use who may have a certain part of their body like not behaving the way that the rest of us would be able to do it, or a whole bunch of different things. So the purpose there was at the ride aim to put the rare diseases on the map. So the captain's ride was Steve Wall himself cycling from Sydney to Byron Bay. They got a whole bunch of kind of CEOs and different people who were going to be raising the funds for it. So they paid tickets to be a part of the ride. And that was obviously where a lot of the fundraising came from. But I guess the broader awareness and like how do you actually shift the cultural change of getting these diseases on the map and recognized within NDIS is where you have to get that broader reach. And that's where PR came in. So the news elements for this one, we had photo and broadcast opportunities all the way along the ride. So as we'd stop in small country towns between Sydney and Byron, we made sure we were calling ahead to make sure the journalists in that town knew that we were coming, knew that there'd be an interview opportunity with Steve, and knew that we could talk about it. There was also a website component where people could go on, and every kilometre of that map had a different rare disease attached to it. So you could see where we were right now and what disease we were riding for, and you could donate at that time for that disease. So it's just really a broader education story. But I guess, yeah, it's a nice heartwarming one that I was really proud to be a part of. And then on the in-house side, one thing that they'll tell you when you're an agency side and try to scare you out of in-house roles is that all of the diversity of your career is going to go away as soon as you go in-house, because you're going to be working for one brand and solving one problem. Whereas agency side, you get to dabble and see lots of different jobs. Absolutely not true. I've been very happy to find out in the last few months. So just quickly, while I've been at AfterPay, 2 different campaigns here with very different purposes. So the small business big opportunity report was one of the first things that I did when we landed. And that was all about talking about, this is speaking to policymakers and to small businesses and talking about the reasons why AfterPay is good for small business merchants. So that one was really based on research, based on numbers, and wasn't really a consumer. It's not speaking to every Australian, but speaking to small business owners. And it's all about research and numbers and how do we make sure that buy now, pay later and AfterPay gets regulated in the right way to help grow the economy. Whereas on the flip side of things, AfterPay Day is about as consumer as it gets. That's really about speaking to every Australian and helping them find a deal and helping merchants drive sales. So very different campaigns. One of them, I think we had 2 stories for the first one, but it's still a successful campaign because the audience, sorry, when I say 2 stories, as in it got written about in 2 different publications, which compared to AfterPay Day would have been 370 stories. But that's the difference, I guess, in purpose, is not all campaigns are the same and measured on the same KPIs and goals. So again, I think that can come back to what do you think about your career is, do you want to be driving campaigns that, the Steve Wall Foundation, its goals would actually more likely be measured in not success by how many stories you got, but how many decision makers in the government do we actually get in front of, and those sorts of things that, what's the change that you're driving. For businesses, it's often about sales, but it can be a whole bunch of different things. So I think the one takeaway there is that PR is very diverse in terms of the career opportunities available. Sorry, next slide. Yeah. All right, so the last, I think the most important bit is what I would have as advice for you guys. So firstly, talking straight and asking questions. Talking straight, I think, is just such an important thing. Every time you go to a speech or you go to speak to someone about their career, I think it's natural for all of us to try and make ourselves sound smart. And in that language, you often kind of lose the point of what are you trying to say. I think dumbing it down is never a bad thing. For fear of sounding like the dumb person in the room, I think talking straight and just telling you the basics is always going to be helpful. And that applies when you come into a job. Telling people what you're struggling with, asking questions about what you don't know, are really important things, and you can never be expected to know everything. Most of my career I've been working in kind of B2B tech, so business to business tech. And it's something that, like, firstly, you can never come in and be passionate about Atlassian or what the software engineering company that you're going to work for does. And even if you were, you happen to know someone who was in that and you come in with a lot of background knowledge, new products come out every day and your knowledge just gets supplanted. So again, just asking questions as you go is a trait that will get you through a long way. Don't be afraid to say I can't. I think that one applies really on agency side. I think we all want to be yes people. We all want to kind of make sure we're the ones doing the work and not to seem like anything is too much for us. But I think agency land particularly, it's a very uniquely stressful and multi-layered kind of thing. So the way I used to describe it is you've got managers at all these different levels. You've got really senior ones, really junior ones, and they're working with you on all sorts of different accounts. And some of the accounts are really big, paying a lot of money. Some of them don't pay a lot. And some of them are really good brands that aren't paying a lot. And that are all like, who do you prioritize when all the deadlines are due at the same time? You might have a really senior director giving you a deadline that's actually due next week, but they tell you they want it tomorrow. All these like kind of complicated things about, it's not for a person who's just starting their career to work out. And I think the biggest place that you get yourself in trouble is if you just say yes to everything and don't say, hey, actually, I've already got this on my plate. I'd love to help you on that, but can you work out with the other manager which one you guys want me to get to? I think that's a really important trait, and it's something that's like we're all scared to say, but it will help you with your mental health. It'll help you get through the end of the day. I think a lot of people starting their careers have to work really long days because they don't talk about that sort of thing. They want to be seen as the yes person. And when you take on that much work, the only way you can get it done is working till 11 p.m. Whereas if you say, look, it's 4:30, you're giving me a new task. I actually have already got one on my plate. Happy to jump across to that one if it's a priority, but I've only got an hour and a half left in my day. So I didn't do that myself. I do that now. So again, I think, to Jack's point, like the industry is characterized by working really hard, especially early in your career. And it can be really hard to not be competitive in trying to work harder and longer hours than anyone else, but you don't have to do it. I'll skip through so we can get through them all, but sharing your passions, trying new things, making friends is a really important one to that point. Making sure you have a good work environment is all about making friends. You often come in and you might have someone at the same level as you. And a toxic workplace is where both of you are, they're trying to point out each other's mistakes to get the next promotion. I think, say a promotion takes 9 months and you can speed that up by 2 by throwing your colleague under the bus all the time. Like you're going to hate the whole 8 months that you spent, and that extra little bit of time that you got by looking like the manager is not going to make up for the time that you hate the whole time. I've been lucky enough to have friends throughout my whole career, and it's people who spot my mistakes and fix them for me and help each other. When you've got each other's backs, you can have really so much less of a toxic environment and so much better of a career. And you can find people that have strengths in different areas. I've never been a very organized person. I always like to come up with a million different ideas and throw stupid what ifs in the room. But I need people to organize and execute to get that done. And I have to recognize my own weaknesses in those ways. So I think building friends around your strengths and weaknesses, supporting people who may not have the strengths that you have, and vice versa, is something that will take you a long way. The final one would be first in the pool. I'll have to explain it because it probably makes no sense on the board. Be first in the pool was actually a company value of one of my older agencies. And essentially it's kind of a metaphor for, when you're at a house party and it's meant to be a pool party and no one's in the pool. And all it takes is that first person to dive in and then it's on. And I think that idea of, you just don't be afraid to be the first one to put up your hand if you think you've got a good idea or you think there's something that you should be considering. There may be other people in the room that have the same idea or want to jump on the back of your idea. You might spark someone else's creativity by saying your piece. So don't be afraid to be the first in the pool. It makes a better party.
And we'll now move on to Min. So Min, if you could also just quickly introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your current position, experience, and career journey.
Of course. We have been on a journey, can I be honest? When we started with Jack, I was like, oh my God, this is a vibe. And then we moved across and we moved across. And I was like, I kind of feel like I need to really pull it out of the bag right now. I need to sum up all the key points and I need to make it really matter. So I'm going to go for tears, but if you don't know, it's okay too. My name's Min. I am the Digital Social Media and Partnerships Manager at the Arnott Group. Now, that's just a really complicated way of saying I work in PR, digital, and social. Now, 2 things to take away from what Jack said. You have got to love what you do if you work in these fields, mainly because you're going to be working on them all day long, 24/7. You will wake up in the night and something has happened. someone has maybe smacked someone at the Oscars and suddenly you have to make a meme about it. And you're too old to know what's cool anymore. So you're talking to all the younger interns and all the grads and you're like, hey, so what would be funny? Just asking for a friend. And they kind of look at you like you're the oldest person in the room. And I actually do think I might be, just quietly. So when you're working in this industry, you've got to love what you do, but you're also the roadie. You think PR is super glamorous. You think you're going to the parties and you're wearing the pretty dresses and you're getting the photos taken. No, that's like 5% of the time. You are going to be the roadie. You're going to be the person who's like holding gaffer tape at the side of someone's dress and you're just pulling them into it. Or someone's having a bad day, they're chewing gum at the wrong time and you're like, there's no bin around, here's my hand, right? You are that person and your job is to make people and the brand look amazing because you believe in them. And when you love something, you want it to shine. And that's exactly what your role is. But when you love someone, you've also got to point out, maybe sometimes when they're stepping the wrong way, you're the conscience of the business. So when the business says, hey, we've got this great idea, we're going to make all this money off it, but we might piss off a couple of people and I'm going to screw over some other people, don't let them do that. Your job is to make sure that the consumer is front of mind each time, and that if it ended up on the front page of the paper tomorrow, that it's going to be your job to clean up. So you better make sure it doesn't happen. And that can be hard. That can be really hard because you respect your CEO, you respect your boss, you respect the people that you work with, and they work really hard, and they're often told that they have to come up with something brilliant to make a lot of money maybe, or to raise the profile of something. And when their criteria is maybe different to your criteria or your lens, you've got to get really good at getting people on side, and that's where making friends is really important. So I'm super lucky because I get to work at the Arnott group. I grew up loving the brands that sit within Arnott. So it's Shapes, it's Tim Tam, it's brands that people already love. But when I eat it, it's super duper special to me because everyone's got their own little memory attached to Arnott. But for me, it takes me back to a little place in Queensland where I grew up. Everyone's told about their childhood, so I kind of feel like it's group therapy right now. I need to kind of open up to all of you. The day that I was due to be born, my parents got on a plane and they went to New Zealand because that was the only place that was accepting people from my home country where things were a little bit unstable. So mum's, on the plane and she's like, oh, don't be born in international waters, that's really awkward. We get there and I'm born in New Zealand, it's awesome. But dad's like, I'm really cold. We come from an island. I want to go somewhere warmer. We end up here. But the only place they could really afford was way out in Queensland in the middle of nowhere. And I grew up in this beautiful community. It was teeny tiny. It's the type of place that during summer it blows up because tourists come along and then everyone leaves and we're like, damn, we're poor again. So it was hard. But the thing that I grew up hearing a lot of was stories from my parents. They were telling me stories all the time about where we'd grown up and what they'd been through. And there was a massive First Nations population as well, where I was growing up. And they would also tell stories. So storytelling was a huge part of my childhood. It was a huge part of what we did and how we related and how we connected and how we felt sort of part of something bigger. And when I think about my career in PR and when I think about social media, it is very much about community. It's about telling stories. It's about being a part of something bigger. So when I was asked to have Livia on to you guys, I had a little reflection back into how did I go from wanting to tell stories for a living and how did I go from wanting to be an author to here, where I screwed for the parrot. So if we pop over to the next slide. This was it. This is as catchy as I could make it, but hopefully you've got enough catchphrases in there and enough buzzwords that you can walk away with some knowledge. But essentially, and this is where you're going to know that I'm super old, back in 2006, YouTube had not quite reached Australia. A lot of American creators were creating content, a lot of people in the UK were creating content, but we were still really brand new. We didn't even have an office in Sydney. They were co-sharing with Google in the BT Tower. So I decided that if people could they could make videos, I could make videos too. So I started making videos. And I was still going to uni at this time. And I was kind of thinking to myself, if I can maybe get a following, maybe I too can share my stories. But really, I also did because I was vain as hell, right? When you're that age, you're kind of like, I just want to be known for something. So I started making videos. I developed a following. And back in those days, you didn't just get your video monetized. You actually had to be offered a contract by YouTube. So I got that contract. And I thought I'd kind of made it. I was like, this is good. This will be my lifestyle. I will be glamorous. And then I realized that it wasn't a lot of money. It wasn't even enough to maybe pay my cab home after I pretended to be cool for a while at a gathering of some kind, like a video con or something. So then I realized I had to hustle. I had to leverage this audience that I had to get what I needed, which was income. And I managed to convince some brands that I could talk to young people because at that time I was young and they jumped on it. So I started getting sponsored by brands and that was phenomenal. And it allowed me to then leverage myself into getting a job at an agency. So I cannot stress to you enough how badly you need to work at an agency. Like at the time I cried every day. It was the least glamorous, the least thankful, sometimes even the least dignified role I had, but it was also the place where I made the best friends. I learned so much, and you don't just get like put into a little corner and you do your job and that's it. You actually learn so much because you're exposed to so many different people. You are forced to learn new skills. There's no such thing as that's not my job because very soon you don't have a job. You need to really push yourself. And that's what I did when I was at the agency. I learned so much. And because of that, I learned how to design. I wasn't just creating videos anymore. I was designing, I was writing copy, I was doing all of these other great things. And once I did that, I was there for a couple of years and I started to feel comfy. Never feel comfortable, ever. Like unless you're wearing shoes, but just never feel comfortable. Because the minute you feel comfortable in your career, you don't grow. And so I went to a little catch up with some friends. It was a backyard barbecue and met some guys and they were at a startup. And at the time, I remember thinking there were 4 German men and they had these great ideas. I couldn't really understand what they were saying, but they seemed really into it. And I had had a couple of Bacardi degrees by then, so I was feeling into it too. And I heard that they had this dream that they wanted to create a telco, a phone company. And I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. And they're like, you should be into it too. And you've got all these great skills and we think that you should join us. And I remember walking away from that party thinking, I'm never going to talk to those people again. But then they reached out to me again. And they were like, no, we want to do video, we want to do social media. We think this is the future of telecommunications. And at the time I was like, I'm really comfy where I am. I'm learning heaps. I'm still loving what I do. I've got friends. This is cool. But then there's these guys over here and they've got a dream and they seem really into it. So I took a leap of faith and I joined them. And if I could honestly say, like, that was the best 4 years of my life. They were amazing. There was so much fun. I learned so much. It was amazing mobile. We went from having 30 people in a room with like, customers and getting IOUs at the end of the year for when we were expecting our bonus. It was in an envelope and it was pushed slowly across the table. And so I went from being in the trenches with this team of people who had a dream to very quickly having over 1 million customers. We were operating across 2 different countries. We were the largest MVNO in Australia. And I went from being literally the social media child. I was like the youngest one there. I was like, oh, this is great. Being literally the social media executive to the group marketing and communications manager across all of their brands. So at that point, they'd purchased more businesses. They're doing amazing things. I feel like I actually grew up while I was there. Like I went from all of the nights out and all of the, everyone stays up till 3, 4, 5, as long as they need to. And then coming into work the next day, still drunk from the night before, to being the one that was like, hey, who needs a cab? And that's when I was like, wow, I've really grown up. But the whole point of that was you need to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with great people, that you're picking up every experience as you go along, and that you're always open to learning. But once again, I started to feel comfortable and I don't like comfort. So I started looking at the things that I had gaps in. Where was I maybe not leveraging my skills. Where could I learn? I was still young enough to maybe make the move somewhere else and pick up some extra skills, because average isn't good enough. And I don't want to be happy, I want to be ecstatic. So I started work at Sydney University, where I was the digital editor-in-chief. They told me that they wanted to set up a digital transformation, which seems to be a bit of a buzzword at the moment. Like, everyone wants a digital transformation. I still haven't worked out what that means, but I've participated in like 3. And what I think it is basically learning to talk to people better and on their terms, and when they're in the right mindset and when they're on the platform that they actually care about. So I started working at Sydney Uni, and I thought I had it in the bag. I was like, I've come from a tech company, my background's in tech, I'm sweet, like this is good. And then I realized when you work at a university, there's like 60 layers of management and so many people you have to negotiate with, and so many stakeholders that you have to learn how to communicate with, even if maybe you think they're crazy, right? Like, I once had someone ask me, I need an icon for taste. I don't know what that means. And you don't know what that means. We're both just saying words right now. But when you're in a role where you have to manage a lot of stakeholders, like you do at a university, you've got to learn to speak their language. And you've also got to learn to figure out the journey while you're on the journey. So I'm at Sydney. We've started this digital transformation. It's sick. COVID happens. And the entire university shuts down. And I'm like, well, that sucks. I then moved on to Arnott. So Arnott for me is like, I don't even know how to put it. It's like the culmination of this big journey that I've been on in my life, where I remember it from my childhood. I remember it because it had so many beautiful moments of like waiting for my parents and hanging out with my friends and picking up all of these great memories. And now that I'm older and I'm able to retell those stories through our ads, through our content, through all the things that we do, I've realized that I can really pull together the things that I'm passionate about, the things that I really value, the things that I really care about into what I do every single day. So make sure that when you're looking at a role, you're not just looking at the dollar figure. You're not just looking at the title, because the title can look amazing, but if you work with trash people and you do trash work, you're not going to be happy. You might feel like you're cool for flexing your title for 5 minutes, but then you still have to be there on Monday morning and still need to deal with people. And if you don't love it, it ain't getting better. But on to the next one. Speaking of doing things you love. So I love Tim Tam. I shouldn't play favorites, but I love Tim Tam. And when I first started working at Arnott, when I was being interviewed, they were like, what can you do for us that's different? Or like, what are you going to do that's going to transform our business? And they said it exactly like that. And I said, I want merchandise. I want Tim Tam perfume. And I remember saying it, and the person who was interviewing me did this like very visible, like, you know, and I kind of thought, I'm like, I've either got it in the bag at this point or I have definitely turned this person off. Thankfully, I said other things that were right that kind of made up for the fact that I decided I wanted Tim Tam perfume. So this year when Tim Tam Day rolled around, I was in a pickle, because I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of forget about it. And I was like, oh damn, it's in 6 weeks. What are we gonna do? So we had a little think, and we know some fragrance houses. We know some beautiful people who work really, really hard on merchandise, and we came up with think like a startup plan, which basically meant I had to hustle like I was at an agency again. I had to hustle like I was at a startup again. And I suddenly had this beautiful team of people. There were no passengers. Everyone had a set job, and nobody played outside of their numbers. So when I say that, I mean, you know, when you're like 8 and you play soccer or something like that, or you watch kids playing soccer and everyone's chasing after the ball, and you're like, if everyone just played to their numbers, if everyone just stayed where they were meant to be, you would have a much better game. When you're in a team and you've got to hustle fast and hard, trust people to do their job and give them guidance when they need it, but don't feel like you've got to chase the ball for them. So we let everyone play to their numbers. And in 6 weeks, we turned around a store that had the world's first Tim Tam perfume. It smells so good, just quietly. You may smell it if you come in. It smells like tonka bean and sandalwood. I really like that. Anyway, and the perfume sold out within 24 hours. The business was skeptical. They were like, it's $90. Who's going to buy novelty perfume for $90? It's not novelty perfume. It's Tibetan perfume and it smells divine. I was also lucky that our brand manager came from perfume, just quietly. So this wasn't going to be some Jolly Rancher business. We also had over 1 million visitors and international news coverage. So at the time, something that we were not gonna lie, pretty terrified about, because up until like a couple of hours before it was going live, I was still working on the website. I was still using all of those skills that I'd picked up when I was still in agency land, and I was like playing the code on a page because it wasn't rendering correctly. I'm sitting there going, shit, I haven't done this since I was like 21. I was setting up an EDM and everything was askew, and I was like, Lord have mercy, everything's going wrong. And that's when you kind of sit down and you're like, this is a teaching moment. This is like my hallmark moment where I realize everything's coming full circle. So life works in mysterious ways. If you love what you do, you're always going to find your way out of it. And if you're open to every single opportunity, you are absolutely not going to fail. But if we head over to the next slide, I have summarized that. Ta-da! Choose your own adventure. That's literally what we're doing today. The world is at your feet. You have every opportunity to achieve your dreams today. Like, if you wanted to, you could run out and become a freelancer, get as much experience and exposure to as many different organizations, brands, people, things that you're doing. It is invaluable. At some point in your career, everyone needs to take like 5 minutes to be a freelancer. I did it for 8 months and was sick. Then get a mentor. Find the person who has the job that you want and ask them for a coffee. Everyone's got time for coffee, and if you can do it virtually, even better. Volunteer. So I volunteer with a not-for-profit called Deadly Science. It is a huge part of my heart. It is a huge part of my life. And we help children in remote and regional areas have access to STEM and school resources. We directly help the community that I grew up in, mainly because I was like, oh, this is really cool. I get to connect back with my roots. When you are doing work that speaks to your values, 2 things happen. You do your best work, and you meet people who share your values. And if you want to work for someone, you want to work for someone who has the same values as you. The final thing is join a grad program. So this is the company plug. It really will fast track your entry into an organization. Arnott is incredible. We had our first one last year. We were so spoiled with the caliber of grads that we had come in. We had a 91% retention rate. And that works both ways. Like, you can work somewhere as a grad and think to yourself, like, this kind of sucks. I'm not going to take up the offer if they give it to me. And the other side is obviously like, if they want to keep you. But we were super lucky that our grads had a blast. They chose to stay on. The 2 grads in my team who are now full members of the team, they're execs in my team, never actually reported into me. They were working in a completely different part of the business, and it was just through those kitchen conversations, through talking to them about what they were passionate about, seeing the work that they were doing, but from afar, I was actually able to say, that's the person I want in my team. That's someone who I think really embodies the next generation of Arnott staff. And so I believe we have intakes every August. Please reach out. I cannot rate it highly enough. There's like a massive induction program. But the thing that I love the most about the program is that people learn who they are throughout it. So if halfway through it, you go, I thought I wanted to do marketing, but actually I'm more into sales, or I'm more into supply chain. That's happened. You can change. You can be connected with the right people because they want you to realize your potential. And they want to make sure that you are living your dream every day that you're there, because there's no point holding you hostage in a graduate environment. But that is me.
So thank you to all of our speakers for providing some invaluable insight into your career journey, the professional industry, and advice to students here today who dream of becoming, marketing and media professionals just like you guys. And I hope our audience here today has gained a more holistic insight into the various career paths and opportunities available. So we'll now just quickly move into a very brief Q&A session with our speakers, as we're short on time. We do have a few questions from our online audience, and we'll move into our in-person questions later for networking. So our first question, just for all of our speakers, agency or corporate? It is a hard question, but agency or corporate?
I would say to get to started, I would say agency, but I think we're all biased towards our own career paths and think we've made the right choices, or at least I hope we do. I don't know, is there anyone else?
Agency every day.
Believe it or not, but I would say agency too. From the work I did at the beginning, you will learn very quickly and very hard what you need to do to go further. So I would definitely start there. Even though you might do it begrudgingly, it will lead you somewhere.
And okay.
If I can indulge a little bit just as to the why, just one thing about agencies, I guess, yeah, I mean, we all said it, that kind of mile wide, inch deep. So I think before I got into PR, the reason I jumped from events to that is one of my aunties told me that I had a cousin in it. And they said it's like an on-the-job MBA. You get to look at so many different business plans and try and work out how comms or whatever role you slide into in agency land, how that fits into the picture and all these different business challenges. So again, if you don't really know where you are, I mean, someone once told me that it's kind of like the arts degree of the job world. It's kind of like, it's a great thing. You get to do business. If you don't know what that is, you learn on what it means for so many different companies. So it's a good place to start.
Yeah, great. And we'll just move into our online audience, in-person audience here. Do you guys have any questions? Feel free to put your hand up and ask. Or I have some more online. Yes.
This question's for Jack. Jack, you're talking about, being a jack of all trades. And if you don't enjoy, the internship job, then that, move on to the next thing, move on to the next thing. But I think it's relatable to me and a lot of other people here. I feel like a lot of employers are looking for some stability, like for you to be committed to your job. To what extent is that an issue if you're not enjoying your job? Like 3 months, you leave after 3 months. So what does that say about you?
I think now being on the flip side where I interview people and I think back to, this person's jumped a lot. It's very important to have a very good rationale as to why you've left. And I also think as much as, you're not meant to climb so young, if there's a progression, that is important. So I think where I was with my roles, each one sort of climbed up the whole time. I don't want to say go backwards. Obviously, when I left the full-time role, that's one reason for leaving, but that was because it was a completely different part of media. But from the jack of all trades perspective, I think it's very important that if you do start, out as an intern and you move up to an audience assistant, audience coordinator, production coordinator, and there's different roles and you can see some sort of progression, that's where that sort of difference lies. And then when I'm interviewing people and I'm like, why did you stay there for 4 years in the same role? Like, oh, because, I loved it. I had lots of friends and I just wanted to get to know everything. I'm like, cool, when did you actually stop learning? And they're like, about 2 years ago. And I'm like, so the past 2 years, what were you doing? And then they're like, I was solidifying what I was doing. You solidified it 2 years ago. You could have been interviewing for this job 2 years ago. But then when I have people who have jumped a lot, I just say, why did you jump so much? And then when I hear things like new opportunities, so I felt like I'd reached the peak, and then I look at the role and I'm like, yeah, you did, because it was pretty basic. And then I see them move up. That's where that sort of crux lies. But don't get me wrong, there is a lot of people that will just jump and jump and jump, but you'll see it. There's obviously, upward movement and sideways and diagonal. And they'll actually bang, 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 bang. And it's like, okay, you're ping-ponging around. I want to see some sort of upward move. And I want some sort of story that can tie back to either your passion or the professional progression. And that's where I'm like, okay, there's a reason. And I think it's also important. Look at tenure, yes, but the priority really has to be the reason as to why you're moving. Because you could be great and sit in a company for 10 years. But as I said before, if you stopped learning at year 2, you've wasted 8 years. I'm really sorry. But it's true, because you're not getting promoted, not earning more money. They're probably 2 things you need to really be worried about in the working world. But from a professional perspective, you're not getting any new skills that's going to give you the leg up. So does that sort of touch on and answer both sides of that? Cool. Anyone else want to add? You might be like, what, you are too jumping around. I don't know. Anyone have any perspective on that?
I think you, in certain jobs, you can jump around and learn different things within the role that you're in. So that's, I guess, the counter to, like, you can't be a jack of all trades in one place. I think when you're applying for a job, like, make sure you ask them about what sort of career mentorship they have within the company. The good companies should have like a bit of a structure set up that's going to check back in with you about how you're enjoying your time there and what you want to be learning. And again, I think you can kind of find mentors within the company that you're like, actually, like the more I see of that person, I just want to become that person. And so you can kind of build your career path within the company. But I would agree with Jack that, yeah, if there's a narrative or a reason behind why you moved, it's not a bad thing. Yeah, but it definitely, all the sentiments are true. People want you to be loyal, but I think you need to look after number one at the end of the day. And if you see a better opportunity, yeah, look after you.
And we'll just have one more question. Yeah.
So this is, I think mainly to Jared, but both of you guys have kind of experience in startups and agency as well. What is the biggest difference between those two?
Controversial, but at a startup, you give a shit because that's your heart and soul. You wouldn't have joined a startup, you wouldn't have taken the risk if you didn't truly 100% believe in that dream and that goal. And you wake up every day giving a shit. And when things aren't right, you work and work and work until it's fixed. And you don't mind it as much. It's your business and it's your baby. And there's this saying, everyone's an owner. That's literally true. So you're in the trenches together, you're looking after each other. The care factor is exponentially higher. Working in an agency is cool, but it's not your business. It's not your brand. It's not your baby. It's, at the end of the day, the decisions are out of your hands. You're pitching, you're presenting, you're providing solutions, and you may really care about your clients, and that's a really good thing, but you're still not the one driving, I suppose.
Everyone's been real harsh on agencies. I think the key difference would be time and money. With startup, it's a lot of time, not a lot of money. And then in agencies, the ideal balance is time and money. So it's sort of based in a retainer structure where the client pays X and then that X goes into X hours. Whereas a startup's kind of like grandma's $5,000 is lasting us however long. So agency kind of, sorry, startups. Yeah, true. So agency ideally is in a situation where the model is you're getting adequate money for time once you're worth it.
And that wraps up today's careers panel. And because we have run out of time, you guys are free to stay back for networking if you'd like, but it is 6:30 now. So we'd just like to finally thank all of our speakers for coming today. Just as a thank you on behalf of APRS for coming and attending a speakers day, we have some gifts for you. So we've got gifts from PBK. They are personalized notebooks, so your name engraved in them. I hope I've got the right
Thanks for having
people.
us, guys.
Yeah, this is awesome. So you check inside, I've got the right people. But yes, feel free to come up to the speakers now. Feel free to network, ask any questions. And yeah, you guys are free to leave or stay.